Hello students, this is the continuation of our previous topic, that is schizophrenia, where I have discussed till the positive symptoms, right? So in this presentation I have covered negative symptoms of schizophrenia and psychomotor symptoms of schizophrenia. Moving on to the topic ADHD, which means attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So by now you all know what is schizophrenia, right? And also the positive symptoms. So positive symptoms are those behaviors which are basically the add-ons to the person's behavior. And negative symptoms are certain deficits in the behavior of a person. So what we know is that with positive behavior or positive symptoms, we can see that earlier maybe the person was not behaving in that way, but after developing schizophrenia, with the symptoms, the person is having hallucinations, delusions, right? And with negative symptoms, suppose earlier the person was talking, but with schizophrenia, with the development of schizophrenia, the person might not be talking so much like he used to talk, he or she used to talk. But now the person is showing some of the deficits in behavior. Previously or earlier, while the person was showing certain behaviors, but now the person is not doing those behaviors. Okay, so negative symptoms are pathological deficits, and it includes poverty of speech. That means they will be talking less. Blunted and flat affect, that means their emotion becomes lesser, and their affect, the way they have the attachment to other person, okay, that will be lesser. Then there is loss of volition, that is movement, and then there is social withdrawal. They will withdraw themselves from certain social interactions. So people with schizophrenia show alogia or poverty of speech. The poverty of speech is known as alogia. That means there is a reduction in speech and speech content. As I said earlier, that maybe the person used to talk, but while the person is developing schizophrenia, with negative symptoms, the person is talking lesser and lesser. Then many people with schizophrenia, they show less anger, sadness, joy and other feelings than most people do. That means they are having less emotions. Okay, they are becoming emotionally less attached with the people, and therefore it is said that they have blunted affect. Okay, while some people with schizophrenia, they show no emotions at all. And when the person is showing no emotions at all, that condition is known as flat affect. Alright? Also, patients with schizophrenia, they experience avolition or apathy and an inability to start or complete a course of action. Once they start an action or an act to do, they cannot complete the act. Okay? Or in some cases, they are also unable to start a new course. Okay? Then people with schizophrenia may withdraw socially and become totally focused on their own ideas and fantasies. They are always busy with their own world. Own world maybe because of delusions and hallucinations. They are always busy with their own ideas and fantasies. That's the reason why gradually they withdraw from society, they gradually withdraw from social interactions. Here in this slide, you will see an image where different types of negative schizophrenia symptoms are given. Examples of negative symptoms are given, which we have already discussed. Alright, you all can just go through it. Next, we have psychomotor symptoms. Now, what are the psychomotor symptoms? So, along with positive and negative symptoms, people with schizophrenia also show some psychomotor symptoms. That means they move less spontaneously, okay, and also make odd grimaces and gestures. So these symptoms, when they take some extreme forms, then it is known as catatonia. Under catatonia, we have catatonic stupor, catatonic rigidity, and catatonic posturing. So, in catatonic stupor, people remain motionless and silent for long stretches of time. The way they are in, they will be in that same motion, motionless. There will be no motion, there will be no movement, in fact, and also they will not talk, they will remain silent for long stretches of time. All right, so maybe they might remain motionless and silent for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, or even for several days. They will remain at the same position. Next, we have catatonic rigidity. That means maintaining a rigid upright posture for hours. So if they're in a position, they will maintain that position again for long duration. Okay. Then there is catatonic posturing. Catatonic posturing means assuming awkward or bizarre positions for long periods of time. Again, suppose if a person's hand is on air, so they will maintain that position, that posture, maybe for more than 4 or 5 days. Okay, they will remain like that. Okay, so like that, this all categories they fall under catatonia, and that with that we have the psychomotor symptoms. In the next slide, you will see this are some of the pictures of catatonic schizophrenia. You can see in the picture that they have very odd and bizarre positions. Now in this position only they will remain like that maybe for several days or maybe for months also. So with that what they will do is that they are maintaining it. So for some, maybe because of their thought processing also, some might think that it is my responsibility to save the world. So in order to save the world they will have a different kind of posture. They will keep their hands up on the air, showing that they are holding the earth. Okay, they are holding our planet earth. And if they do not hold like that, if they do not hold a position like that, as if holding the planet earth in their hand, so they feel that it is their responsibility to save the earth, our planet. And if they do not do so, then all the whole earth will be in danger. So that is what they think. And then they also think that the earth will fall off their hand, and then the planet earth will get destroyed because of them. So that's the reason why they will just hold that position upright in that same position, and maybe for several days they will just remain like that. Okay. Next, we have neurodevelopmental disorders. Neurodevelopmental disorders means that the development of the central nervous system is disturbed. So one of the most common feature of the neurodevelopmental disorder is that they manifest in the early stage of development. So often the symptoms appear before the child enters school or during the early stage of schooling. So right at the time when the child starts to go to school or during the early stages of schooling, during that time only there are certain symptoms that can be looked at or can be diagnosed by the parents or teachers. And these disorders result in hampering personal, social, academic, and occupational functioning. So that's how one can point out the problem, that the child is having some kind of problem. So this get characterized basically as certain deficits or certain add-ons in a particular behavior, or delays in achieving a particular age appropriate behavior. So when uh, we as human beings, we have certain milestones, right? So we have to reach particular milestones, and every behavior, we have certain age appropriate behaviors as well. So there are certain delays while the children cannot achieve. Okay, so if there are certain delays in achieving that particular age appropriate behavior, then one can say that there are certain neurodevelopmental disorders. Now we have several disorders under the neurodevelopmental disorders which basically can be seen in children. Okay, so there is this attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, then intellectual disability, and then there is specific learning disorder. So these disorders, if not attended, can lead to more serious and chronic disorders as the child moves into adulthood. So now we know that under neurodevelopmental disorders, there is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, that is ADHD. Now in this slide, let's check out what is this ADHD. Alright, so here ADHD, it has two main features. One is inattention and other is hyperactivity impulsivity. So children who are inattentive find it difficult to sustain mental effort during work or play. Sustain means they cannot focus on longer duration of their mental effort during any work or during any play. Okay, and they have a hard time keeping their minds on any one thing or in following instructions. They cannot follow instructions properly, and they also cannot sustain their attention for longer duration. So common complaints are that the child does not listen, cannot concentrate, does not follow instructions, is disorganized, easily distracted, forgetful, does not finish assignments, and is quick to lose interest in boring activities. So these are some of the complaints that often parents as well as teachers have with children who are suffering from ADHD. And what is impulsive? Being impulsive, that is impulsivity. Now children who are impulsive, they seem unable to control their immediate reactions or to think before they act. They just do whatever they want to do. They do not think. So if they want something, they will just do it. If they want to play, they will just go and play. They cannot wait for their turn. Okay, so they find it difficult to wait or take turns. That means they have difficulty resisting immediate temptations or delaying gratification. Okay, if they want to ask something to the teacher, the child will not wait for his turn, but impulsively he or she will just stand up and just ask whatever he or she wants to ask to the teacher. Getting the point? And also, the minor mishaps such as knocking things over are common, whereas more serious accidents and injuries can also occur because of their impulsivity. Okay, so uh, the moment you just go and tell that stop, don't do, they will, before that only they will just do the thing. Next word that we have over here, the next term is hyperactivity. So hyperactivity also takes many forms. So children with ADHD are in constant motion. Okay, so sitting still through a lesson is impossible for them. So hyperactivity, what the child will do, if there is a class going on in the classroom, the teacher is taking a class. So with hyperactivity, the children with ADHD, that is hyperactivity, the children will just roam around the classroom only, because the child with ADHD cannot sit still at one place, and it is actually impossible for them. So what they will do is that they will just move around the whole classroom. Maybe they will go from one row to the other row. They will just keep on distracting the entire classroom. Okay, so what happens, the child may fidget, squirm, climb and run around the room aimlessly. Nothing like that, but because of hyperactivity, the child is just doing all activities whatever uh, he or she is satisfied with. So often parents and teachers describe them as driven by a motor, that is always on the go, and also they talk incessantly. That means they talk more than the other students or other children. Okay. in the last slide, you can see there is a picture where two children are holding two signboards, right? One holding type 1 ADHD and another type 2 ADHD. So basically there are two types of ADHD, and also there is one third category as well, which is combined type of ADHD. But for your knowledge, this is not in your textbook. This is just for your knowledge, that you know there are two types of ADHD. In type 1 ADHD, there is inattention, but maybe hyperactivity might not be there in some children, whereas in type 2 ADHD, there might be only hyperactivity without inattention. There is possibility. Whereas in some children, as we know that there is this combined type of ADHD, where there is both in one child, there can be inattention as well as hyperactivity both together. Okay, and as well as there might be impulsivity as well. So there are certain symptoms you can check over here, whereas I want to point out some important symptoms of type 1 and type 2. In type 1 ADHD, the child with ADHD may have trouble paying attention, trouble following directions. They might have shy or withdrawn behavior, and they're easily distracted. Whereas in type 2 ADHD, where there is only hyperactivity without inattention, so children over here may be having restlessness because they are always active. There might be impulsive speech and actions present in them, and also there might be excessive talking, and they might have difficulty for waiting turns. All the symptoms that is uh, regarded to hyperactivity is present with type 2 ADHD. Okay, so this is, again I'm telling, this is not from your textbook, this is just for general knowledge, and please go through the slides once again and try to understand.